Some more problematic examples of Tafseer Ishaaree. If you recall some of those explanations of the individual letters at the beginnings of various surahs, which As-Suyuti mentioned in Durr al-Manthur, some of them are attributed to Ibn Abbas and some of the other Sahaba. The vast majority are attributed to the Tabi'een and others after them. If those attributions to Ibn Abbas are authentic, then it's highly problematic. Because having these symbolic meanings that Alif stands for Allah, and Lam stands for His Lutf, Mim stands for His glory. This is not familiar usage of the language according to the way the Arabs use the language. There are some isolated examples of something that approximates that, but there's always context surrounding it that would indicate some intended meaning, and there is no context surrounding those discontinuous letters. And then al-Tustaree goes on to make an even stranger claim regarding Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He says that between the Alif and the Lam in the name of Allah is a hidden letter. It contains one of the supreme secrets that only the pure of heart can comprehend. A bit strange. Or it's very strange. Another example, indeed the first house of worship, إِنَّ أَوْلَ بَيْتٍ وُضِعَ لِلنَّاسِ لَلَّذِي بِبَكَّةٍ مُبَارَكًا وَهُدًى لِلنَّاسِ. Indeed, the first house of worship established for mankind, هُدًى لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Indeed, the first house of worship established for mankind was that at Mecca. The verse mentions Mecca. It's an alternate name for Mecca. Blessed and a guidance for the worlds. 96 of Ali Imran. After acknowledging the literal meaning to be the Kaaba, Tustaree says, and the inner meaning is the messenger, al-Rasul. Whoever among humanity in whose heart Allah implants Tawheed will believe in him. It may be that Pickthall was somehow influenced by this commentary because his translation of the verse says, indeed, the first sanctuary appointed for mankind was that at Bakka, a blessed place, a guidance to the peoples. So, if you think of the Prophet ﷺ as a sanctuary for humanity, it's a little bit clearer than house as linking it to the Prophet ﷺ. Anyway, in Surah An-Nisa, there's a verse that says, in the course of it mentions kindness to parents and to near kindred and the orphans and the needy, and to the neighbor who is of kin to you and the neighbor who is not of kin and the fellow traveler and the wayfarer. Tustaree says, after mentioning the Zahir explanation, as for the inner meaning, the neighbor who is of kin to you is the heart, al-Jari dhil qurba, the neighbor who is of kin, is the heart. Wal-Jar al-Junub, the neighbor who is not of kin, is al-Tabi'a, which I guess would mean human nature. Was-Sahibu bil-Jam, the fellow traveler, is the intellect that follows the Sharia. Wabn as-Sabil, the wayfarer, is the limbs of the body which are obedient to Allah. Okay, so that's highly symbolic and pretty far removed from the outer meaning of the words, the literal meaning. And then in Surah Rum, verse 41, ظَهَرَ الْفَسَادُ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِي النَّاسِ. Corruption appears on land and sea because of the evil which people's hands have earned. Tustaree said, Allah compared the limbs to the land and the heart to the sea. This is the inner aspect of the verse. Don't you see that the heart is only called qalb because it constantly shifts and because of its depths. So the sea is always shifting, and so therefore he sees, that connection in meaning, and then it's like the sea, and that the heart has these tremendous depths. Major books of Tafseer Ishaaree. Al-Dhahabi indicates that there's a spectrum. There's some scholars who don't delve in it at all, like al-Baydawi, Zamakhshari. There's some who interpret, they use Tafseer Ishaaree occasionally, like an-Naysaburi, who died in 728 after the Hijrah. He's the author of Gharaib al-Qur'an or Raghaib al-Furqan. Al-Aaloosee, fairly recent scholar, he died in 1856 of the Common Era, the author of Rooh al-Aanee. So these scholars make occasional references to Tafseer Ishaaree. Those who do it predominantly, al-Tustaree is an example of that, and some who do it entirely, like Arabee Abdul-Rahmaan al-Sulamee, who we mentioned earlier, was quoted frequently by al-Thalabi. He was a noted scholar of hadith as well, he doesn't seem to have applied any of the standards of hadith criticism in his book, which is called Haqaa'iq Tafsir. Apparently this book hasn't been published. It's present in manuscripts. And he does acknowledge the Zahir meanings. And he says, but these have already been delved into extensively. And he said, I wanted to compile a tafsir, which just deals with the interpretations of the people of Haqaa'iq. And so basically what he did was he collected narrations from primarily his number one source is Abu Ja'far al-Sadiq, and then other scholars of Tasawwuf like Junayd and Sahl al-Tustaree and Fudayl ibn Iyal and many others. And so basically he's compiling other people's statements. So in that sense it's Tafsir bil-Manthur. And Ibn Taymiyyah, he said that almost everything that he transmits from Ja'far al-Sadiq is fabricated. And al-Dhahabi agrees with him. Al-Wahidi, who, if you recall, was a student of al-Thalabi, who quotes his Wahidi's Shaykh al-Thalabi quotes Sulamee a lot. And al-Wahidi, when he was asked about Sulamee's tafsir, he said, if he believes that what he did was tafsir, faqad kafar, and then he disbelieved. Ibn Salah, who was a hadith scholar from several centuries later, he was asked about Wahidi's comment, and he's made an excuse for Sulamee. He said, when somebody is generally considered reliable, when they delve into such things, it's not really intended to be tafsir per se. What he really meant was that he found a similarity between a meaning in the Qur'an and some other meaning, and he said an-nadhir is mentioned with an-nadhir. He said if he had actually meant that that's the meaning of the Qur'an, he would be following the Batini methodology, and he didn't understand him to be doing that, because at the beginning of in his introduction, he acknowledges that there are Zahir, Haqiqi meanings, and that those are other people have dealt with him. He said, despite that, would that they had not taken those liberties in such matters, due to the ambiguities involved and the confusion caused. An example of Sulamee's tafsir, and if we had decreed for them, lay down your lives or go forth from your dwellings, only a few of them would have done so. Surah An-Nisa, verse 66. Sulamee says, lay down your lives means slay your egos by opposing their whims and desires, or go forth from your dwellings. That means remove the love of this world from your hearts, but few of them would have done it. He says they're few in number, but profuse in value. And literally, in aanee, meanings. They're the people of tawfiq, divine enablement, and truthful walaya, sainthood, walaya, sadiqah. In Surah Al-Ra'd, and he it is who spread out the earth and placed therein awtad, firm hills. So the firm hills, he interprets that according to Soofee terminology. Awtad is the name for a certain class of saints. And he says that they are the elite of his servants and the ones to be turned to in difficulties. Through them, salvation is attained. Whoever travels in the earth to seek them will attain success and salvation, and whoever seeks other than them will fail and lose out. There's other examples. You can read it in the text. Now, Ibn al-Arabee, we just really have time to make a few points about Ibn al-Arabee and his tafsir. Now, there's a tafsir that's attributed to him that the rajih, the correct position on that is that he didn't write it. And the one who actually wrote it, his name is Abdul-Razzaaq, al-Qaashaanee, or maybe Qashaanee, who was a Persian, and he was originally Persian-speaking scholar, and he was a couple centuries after Ibn al-Arabee. However, Ibn al-Arabee, in his Futuhat al-Makkiyah and Fusus al-Hikam, he's always making references to Qur'an and Sunnah to place his metaphysical scheme within an Islamic context, or to try to give it some kind of a justification. I'll just read you a quote from the Encyclopedia of Tafsirs, published by E.J. Brill, which is based in Leiden in Holland. It's an Orientalist publishing house. So this is an Orientalist observation about him. He claims to have composed a multi-volume commentary on the Qur'an entitled Al-Jami' wa Tafsil fi Israr Ma'ani Tanzil, but it seems to have been lost. Anyway, he's talking about, he says, since Ibn al-Arabee considered himself to be the greatest arif and Gnostic of his age and possibly of all times, and the spiritual pole of the universe, al-Qutb, he saw no reason to legitimize his understanding of the meaning of the scripture, or as he put it, of its Rooh, spirit, by reference to any prior exegetical authority or tradition. In his opinion, he's absolved of such a justification because his epistemic source is nothing other than divine inspiration. His claim to be a simple mouthpiece of the divine inspirer absolves him of necessity to justify his exegetical method, tafsir method, or to follow any conventional logic. So they say one can cite, and an example of his comments, one can cite his audacious rendition of the story of Harun, Musa, and the golden calf, which is mentioned in Surah Al-Araf and Taha. So here, contrary to the literal meaning of the Quranic narrative, Aaron and the worshippers of the golden calf are portrayed as being wiser than Moses, who misguidedly scolds them for lapsing into idolatry. Unlike Moses, they realize that God can be worshipped in every object, for every object, including the golden calf, is but a site of divine self-manifestation. Ba'dul majali lil ilahiyya. That's in Fusus al-Hukm, Fusus al-Hikam, page 192 of one of the Arabic versions. So, in this interpretation, the original Quranic condemnation of idolatry is completely inverted, and the idolaters have become Gnostics, people who recognize the true nature of reality. They know the full truth concerning idolatry, but are honor-bound not to disclose this truth even to the prophets, the apostles, and their heirs. For these all have their divinely appointed roles in curbing idolatry and promoting the worship of God in their time and their situation. So, and then someone like al-Aaloosee, who quotes Ibn al-Arabi in the beginning of it, and in his tafsir of al-Fatiha, that Ibn al-Arabi says that, in the end, punishment of the kuffar will actually turn into eternal bliss. The punishment will become bliss somehow. He said, when you see something like, al-Aaloosee said, when you see something like this from someone of that stature, then don't try to condemn it or judge it or understand it based on your own limited understanding, because these people know and you don't know, and just accept that you haven't reached that stage. So that's just unacceptable to me and to many people. And so when something flies in the face of the apparent meaning, it has to be rejected. As for the other Tafseer Ishaaree, that you can make a case for it, you can fit it in, you can accommodate it somehow, the ruling for that is, the final ruling is that, okay, you can accept it, but you don't have to, because there are other primary meanings. And so Allah knows best, and may Allah enlighten our hearts and give us understanding and guidance, and keep us on the straight path, and make us die with an acceptable iman. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.